In 1982, in the Windy City of Chicago, at least 7 people were poisoned when they purchased medication from an authorized pharmacy. The deceased thought they were taking a treatment for pains and fevers, but unfortunately, they had ingested cyanide. How and why? Find out more in this video, and please subscribe, thank you. In the Chicago metropolitan area in 1982, a series of poisoning deaths resulting from drug tampering killed at least 7 people. These poor souls had mistakenly taken potassium cyanide instead of the Tylenol-branded acetaminophen capsules they believed they had purchased. One of these deaths included a child. In chronological order, 12-year-old Mary Kellerman was hospitalized on the 28th of September, 1982 after taking an extra-strength Tylenol capsule, and died the next day. On the 29th of September, 1982, 6 further individuals that had taken contaminated Tylenol also died. They were Adam Janis aged 27, Stanley Janis 25, Teresa Janis 20, Mary McFarland 31, Paula Prince 35, and Mary Reiner 27. A public health official visited the Janis household to investigate how 3 members of one family had died. Nurse Helen Jensen located a Tylenol bottle and the receipt of purchase, then noticed that 6 pills were missing, and that there was an almond scent coming from the bottle. She reported her findings, and the county's chief toxicologist who examined the bottle more closely. It was determined that over a tenth of the remaining capsules inside the Janis bottle had 3 times the fatal amount of cyanide required to kill, which prompted an emergency broadcast to notify the general public not to take Tylenol in the near future. Almost immediately after this broadcast, Tylenol was removed from shelves, and in fear of possible copycats, some other medicinal products were also pulled from stores. With a stroke of luck, it was determined that the 7 deaths were tampered capsules from the same batch, leading Johnson & Johnson to issue a product recall for all Tylenol. This would cost them over $100 million in 1982, which is the equivalent of roughly $315 million in 2024. The only good that came out of this case was improvements to packaging were made, such as pull-off stickers, plastic wrap around the caps, and other safety measures that ensured they haven't been tampered with like the Tylenol bottles were. So who did this, and why, are the obvious questions? A police investigation rapidly took heed, and the capsules were believed to have been manufactured in both Pennsylvania and Texas, some 1,600 miles difference. Nevertheless, was concluded that the drugs were tampered with after they had reached stores' shelves. In essence, the police believed that someone with ill intent had removed bottles from shelves, and placed potassium cyanide into some of the capsules, then carefully repositioned the bottles back onto the shelves, in wait of unsuspecting customers. A suspect named James William Lewis was accused of this awful crime, having sent a letter to Johnson & Johnson demanding a ransom of $1 million, in order to stop the poisonings. It was learned that James had previously owned a book relating to poisoning, and detailed in a confidential law enforcement document. James's fingerprints were lifted on the pages concerning cyanide. James vigorously denied being responsible for the poisonings, however admitted to blackmailing Johnson & Johnson, which he claims he had worked on for the best part of a week. He was convicted of extortion and sent straight to prison for a term of 10 years. Official court documents released in 2009 revealed the Department of Justice investigation notes, and finalized that Lewis was responsible for the poisonings, despite the lack of evidence and motive. In 2010, James and his wife were required to offer DNA samples and fingerprints, in a bid to gain enough evidence that he had committed the crimes, and close the case, but a spanner was thrown into the works when the results did not match James to the bottles. James maintained his story that he was not guilty, right up until the 9th of July, 2023, when he passed away, aged 76. It would appear that James was innocent of the bottle tampering, and indeed only guilty of bribery, leaving no suspects. The police had also investigated a second man named Roger Arnold, who was a dock worker whose behavior had become erratic, and had confessed to being in possession of potassium cyanide. Roger's wife had recently left him, and he had also been heard discussing killing people with a white powder. This link grew stronger as Roger had worked with one of the victims, Mary Reiner's father. In addition, a book containing a recipe on making potassium cyanide was found in Roger's property. With evidence mounting against Roger, he was detained and questioned several times by the police, but they never had enough evidence to formally charge him. In a further twist in the summer of 1983, Roger shot a man in a bar, and was convicted for the murder in January 1984, then served 15 years of a 30-year sentence. Roger died in June 2008, and in 2010, his body was exhumed, in order to take a DNA sample from his femur bone, in another bid to nail Roger for the crime. Roger's DNA did not match the DNA samples discovered on the bottles, and the police still did not have their killer. Copycat attacks involving Tylenol took place around the United States immediately following the Chicago deaths, and 3 more deaths were reported in 1986 from gelatin capsules. A 23-year-old named Diane Ellsroth died after ingesting extra-strength Tylenol capsules laced with cyanide, and Excedrin capsules in Washington were interfered with, which resulted in the deaths of Susan Snow and Bruce Nickell from cyanide poisoning. However, an eventual arrest and conviction of Bruce Nickell's wife, Stella Nickell, for her deliberate actions in the crimes connected to both murders. At least that was one more sicko off the streets. Other copycat deaths were attributed to tampered Sudafed and Anacin. No suspect has ever been charged or convicted of the poisonings, only for the bribery against Johnson & Johnson. So will this mystery ever be solved, and motive be obtained, or was this just one evil prank that the killer will take to the grave? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching and please subscribe.